Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Welcome back, everybody, to another weekly edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation news from across the nation. This week, bringing to you news from Montana as it concerns Commission finalizing trapping regulations following court decision. Marie Nemuiller is here live and in person as we are at the 21st annual NASC Summit in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. More from Marie in a moment. Easy does it. A new $5 antlerless season offered in southern Michigan. Disappointing news out of the Keystone State. Pennsylvania fails to move Sunday hunting along. And finally, addressing poacher penalties and fines or lack thereof. All that and more. But let us welcome in Miss Nemuiller. Marie, good to see you.
Thank you, Fred. It's great to be here in person and excited for NASC.
Indeed. Nice day out there. Folks are coming in. There's a little excitement in the air. So imagine we get to the evening festivities, it'll amp right up. But for now, more of the flavor of the summit to come in future episode. But let's talk about what's going on in Montana, trapping, grizzly bears. What's the skinny on it?
So previously there was a lawsuit that was filed and it also went through the appeal process in Montana. The petitioners were concerned that wolf trapping would pose a risk to ESA listed grizzly bears. And the court had found that there was some reasonable risk that those wolf traps could ensnare a grizzly bear. Despite the testimony of Montana State, we saw a similar lawsuit in Idaho as well. Because of that ruling that came down, there was an established region for grizzly bear area where trapping needs to be done differently anytime that grizzly bears are outside of hibernation. And in addition, the department has decided to issue a free supplemental license for anyone who's trapping coyotes as well as non-game animals, especially for livestock conflict. They don't have to pay for the license, it is free, but they're using it to keep track of how many trappers they have on the landscape and traps that are being set out in those areas where grizzly bears are roaming.
So some of the updates here, and I'll get to them, and it's important to highlight. And maybe, and I've never trapped wolves, so maybe there's a difference here. So all foothold traps have a jaw spread less than or equal to 5.5 inches. Now that's great because you're not going to catch bears with anything like that. And even if you did, the ability for the bear to remove its paw or its digit, supposing it got in there like that, they could easily remove that. I wish I knew. I wish I'd been able to trap wolves. It would be awesome, but I'm not sure what size foothold trap are used for wolves.
I
But I go ahead. Sorry.
I think currently they're running about a 6-inch spread
Okay.
on those traps in the areas. The likelihood of a grizzly bear being caught or even snagged in one of those traps is considerably low to zero.
Yeah.
The only grizzly bears documented that were trapped, and I believe it was in Idaho, it was in an illegal set.
Mm-hmm.
Because both states use best management practices for their trapping regulations to make sure that the target species is that one that we are trapping and that other ones like grizzly bears aren't at risk of being caught in those traps. They do have breakaways and different setups that they use to ensure that grizzly bears are protected when those sets are out.
You have to think and wonder. When I read the article, I started wondering if this was more of an age class issue or smaller grizzly bear because I just can't see a mature bear, male or female, getting hung up in these things without the ability to remove themselves from it. They're too strong.
Yes. And my understanding from what I read in the court testimony is that even those smaller bears haven't been trapped. Like they're not seeing evidence
Mm.
of grizzly bears, any incidental take of grizzly bears in those wolf traps. So this was, I guess, almost an overabundance of caution because it's not something that we're seeing occurring on the landscape at the moment.
As seems to be the case as it pertains to trapping in so many instances, right? And a lot of that derives from what you just said, an improper or an illegally set trap. We in New England we had some issues with conibear traps because somebody, unlicensed trapper, illegally set a 330 conibear, and a dog got caught in it and died. It was never should have been. It was a legal
Correct.
set. I put them in the same category as poaching, truly, because this stuff shouldn't happen in the first place, but they take these one-off incidences and use it to malign a very useful, ethical, and efficient tool.
And that's where communication around trapping, I think, is going to be vital as we move forward. There are a lot of people who aren't familiar with trapping and the different sets and the wide variety, as well as the best management practices that have been studied so thoroughly, especially at OFWA and within the trapping community, to ensure that the target species is the one that that trap will is targeted for.
Right. And even in this instance too, I think your article referenced the 350-pound pan tension, right? I mean, we've covered this stuff pretty well on this program, and I don't hate rehashing it because I enjoyed talking about it. But when you set pan tension, and the pan is the mechanism that fires the trigger to make the trap go off and then hold an animal in place. You can set the technology is such that you can set it so that if you had a pay intention of 350 pounds, a coyote, a fox, a whatever can step on it and it will not fire. That trap will stay in its state where it was placed. Anything above 350 pounds or puts 350 pounds of pressure or more down is going to fire that trap. So they're very specific. They're when trappers are on the landscape, they are targeting a certain animal. And even with the incidental catches, in this case, grizzly bears, if it ever happened, they would be able to be released unharmed and simply inconvenienced. And maybe the trapper with a grizzly bear probably knock a couple years off his life just in stress alone of releasing it.
And that's where trapping can be such a beneficial tool for wildlife management because you can really target the species that you're aiming for in that habitat and pinpoint your management when you have multiple species, especially predators sharing a landscape. So it's very important that we maintain those best management practices and that understanding and the education around how important, but also how selective trapping can be.
Now, you and I have talked offline about this, but the ability to find that balance, and ultimately, that's what we're always trying to do as conservationists is strike that balance with, you're working with what you have on the landscape. Um, People hear predator management or predator hunting and think we're out there just killing everything on the landscape. Well, that's not gonna work out well for the elk herds and the mule deer herds because you get too many of them, they're gonna eat themselves out of house and home, communicable diseases et al. That we need them on the landscape, but we also need to manage them, in a way that their population isn't detrimental to prey species as well as themselves, outcompeting each other.
Absolutely. And we saw that at a recent Montana Fish and Wildlife Commission meeting. They were looking at their cougar seasons and cougar management, and commissioners were specifically asking, like, are we taking enough cougars to maintain the balance so that we aren't hurting the cougar population, but at the same time, we are managing them at a level that will not give a rise to human wildlife conflict and will also protect the ungulate species in the area, like deer and elk.
So, this is what it is. Again, working with what we've got. It will be interesting, in the coming months to see a new administration come into power and interested to see how they look at an Endangered Species Act and how they utilize that. And my hope, and I think all of our hope, is that it's put to use how it was intended so many years ago for species recovery, get them to the point where they can be conserved, and that is the use of the species as well, not um, protected in perpetuity as has been done with the grizzly bear in the lower 48. It's a resource. Love to be able to use it. It's great that it's back to its population where it can be delisted. I hope going forward in the next administration that probably happens. I hope it happens.
Several states in that region, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, have filed petitions requesting them to grizzly bears specifically to be delisted, and that's up for consideration but not moving at the moment. But it really comes down to if we aren't managing them at that state level with the highly trained biologists that are familiar with those areas, we're doing a detriment almost to those species. They're going to grow to a population level that outpaces the habitat and food sources
Right.
available.
Right.
If we can manage them properly, they will thrive in those regions that they are in with minimal human conflict. Where right now in Montana, we are seeing increasing conflict with grizzly bears, hunters having encounters with them, as well as just outdoor recreationists.
More to come.
Yes.
Maria, I appreciate your reporting. Great to see you, and thanks for stopping in and giving us the download.
Thank you so much for all you do on the podcast.
All right, you got it. All right, thanks again to Marie for stopping in. Let's hit the other highlights from around the nation. This from Bob Matthews. Discounted, well, yeah, discounted $5 uh, antlerless season coming in offered in southern Michigan. There are so many deer that there will be extra opportunity for Michiganders to take advantage of. Highlights here with large doe populations in southern Michigan, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources has authorized an extended late antlers firearm season for select counties. There's a clickable link in the text of the article that can bring you to what those counties are. Of course, if you subscribe to the Sportsman's Voice EPUB, then you already know that. If not, congressionalsportsman.org. Go there, subscribe now. The new season, which will run from January 2nd to the 12th of 2025, has a bag limit of 10 deer at the discounted rate of $5 per license, and the remaining unused tags from earlier seasons may be used. CSF supports management decisions by the state agencies to expand hunting opportunities as a means to conserving populations long pursued by sportsmen and women. For hunters in southern Michigan, if you still if you've struck out during the firearm season, still have space in the freezer, or wish to provide food for less fortunate through game meat donation programs, or simply want to do your part in upholding an ecosystem balance, you now have that opportunity. And hunters, as we talk about so much, play an important and critical role in the ecosystems that they cohabitat. Um, and then it's critical for sportsmen and women to get in the field and participate. The timing on that is great, as well. Post holidays, those who are less fortunate, you may go to work with people who are food insecure, and you have no idea, and they're struggling, and they've gone through the holidays, and they've tried to put on a good face and provide for their family through the holidays, and now they're kind of stuck again in the new year. And man, if you got the ability, go have some more fun in the woods, participate in the balancing of the conservation of these animals, and getting them to getting that herd down to size. And you can do something great for your neighbors too. Not even know it, but just get those deer to those donation programs, and you can do a whole lot of good. Good reporting there from Bob. Thank you for that. Disappointing news out of Pennsylvania. As a previous report on this program, we've had the opportunity, and it looked really good for quite some time that um, Pennsylvania was very close to getting the having the ability for the game commission to regulate Sunday hunting and remove it completely if they so chose. During the process, the bill was returned to appropriations where it just died. They decided not to take further action on the bill. And as a result, Pennsylvania sportsmen and women get to miss out again. Now, there is 3 days, 3 Sundays that have been instituted over the last few years that they can. So there's not a complete moratorium on Sunday hunting in Pennsylvania as there is in Maine and Massachusetts. But nevertheless, 3 Sundays out of all the Sundays is, oh, it's ridiculous. And this needs to get picked up again in the next session. And rest assured, CSF will be all over it and working with our in-state partners to advance new legislation and get this done. And what's really disappointing is just how very close we were to it. Um, Bipartisan support on it. It's just we were there, and just due to the end of the session on the 13th of November, that was it. So if you live in Pennsylvania and you want Sunday hunting, it is imperative in this next session that you engage with your with your representatives there in the state and get them on the bandwagon, get them to pass Sunday hunting. Finally, this from Connor Barker addressing poacher penalties and fines or lack thereof. Great article here, and it really highlights um, the deficiencies in penalties for poaching. I mean, so often the penalty, the fiscal penalty, is less than the cost of a license. You look at something like poaching, and it is thievery. It is thievery of a public resource. It is a selfish act, and if someone went into your yard and I don't know, stole something, someone stole your car, they're gonna get arrested, they're gonna go to jail, they're gonna have incur all these crazy fines. But these animals on the landscape that get poached, it seems like a slap on the wrist. Your habitual offenders, and it takes some time for some of these people to actually lose privileges. I invite you to read more into Connor's article, but the crux of this is states need to get tougher on this stuff. The idea of having a dedicated prosecutor specifically to wildlife law and items like this, as Connor highlights, I think is a fantastic idea. And I know we support it here at CSF. You can have a subject matter expert that can put value, put understanding of what it means when these cases are made and the severity of it. And it's not just treated as the equivalent of a parking. God's honest truth. A parking ticket at the University of New Hampshire can be more than some of these fines across the country, which is absolutely, again, ridiculous. So, bottom line there, we need to get tougher on poachers, the penalties, the restrictions on them, and keep doing it. Go to jail. It's a crime, and you're stealing from not just the sportsmen and women of this country, but you're stealing from the people, all the people. So, at any rate, um, that's this week's show. Thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks again to Marie for stepping in. And feature episode coming to you tomorrow. It's Thanksgiving episode. We're very excited to bring that to you. Chef Josh joins us. Jesse Griffith, Chef Jesse joins us. We're going to talk about the bird. We're going to talk about wild birds. We're going to talk about wild fare. Going out and foraging and it's just a great episode, whole lot of fun. Make sure you eat a sandwich or something and before you tune in because you will leave hungry and ready for a big meal. So tune in there. We'll return next week with a roundup. Like I said, we are this week at NASC in Louisiana, so we're gonna have a great week here. We're gonna bring so many guests to you in the coming weeks with a NASC recap, all sorts of topics being presented on here in Baton Rouge, and looking forward to bringing those NASC sessions to you as we did last year from Dewey Beach. All right, that's it. Until next week, be safe out there. Good luck in the woods if you're still chasing. As always, CSF is your inside connection to outdoor legislation. Till next week, see ya. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.